You play instruments?
Not for many years.
No? What do you used to play?
Piano.
Already? So maybe you can try.
One day I might.
Okay.
Try.
With no audience or with audience? Okay. Well, there's not much audience. If you want to try. Namaho Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaho Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyabhari Asatya Vishatari Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyabhari Paschatya Vishatari Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, oh Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Nitai Gauda Haribo, Haribo, Hari Bol Nitai Gauda Haribo. Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gauda Hari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad-gita ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for being here. When Srila Prabhupada was going to preach to America, or prior to that, his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the first one on the left, told him that if no one came, he should preach to the walls, he said. So, in the first days when Prabhupada arrived to America, it was hard, because he was alone, he was cold, he saw snow for the first time, He wasn't used to these things. And he had no means to maintain himself apart from the help that Krishna was providing. So he was struggling alone and thinking, if things get too hard, then I just go back. I'm an elderly person, so why should I risk my life? So in this way, Prabhupada continued to stay on. And then, surely enough, one day he decided to preach to the walls. And he had a little tape recorder. He pressed record, and what was recorded at that time, it's the introduction. So Srila Prabhupada fulfilled the order of his spiritual master in preaching to the walls. And that preaching became the introduction to this book. Now, that introduction in itself, it's a whole book on its own, because everything is there. Depending on the version that you have, the introduction goes for how many pages? 30-something pages, right? So, how many? 30 pages in this one. Yeah. So, Srila Prabhupada, in this introduction, he puts everything there. Because let's try to bring ourselves back to like a time travel. Prabhupada was on his own, didn't have followers, didn't have money. He already had 2 heart attacks. Later on, he will have a stroke. Half his body was paralyzed. So it was difficult. And he says later, in years later, that sometimes he thought he's going to die. And actually, before he went to America, from what I have read, I think he took like a bag of cereal. If anything, I'll just buy some milk and put some cereal, something like that. That's what I heard. He used to like Horlicks when he was small. So he thought, I'll just eat something and I'll maintain my life like that, like a yogi. So Prabhupada struggled quite a lot. And he was thinking, I may die any moment. I almost died on the way here and on the Jaladuta. So what he wrote, what he spoke, that became the introduction of the Gita, you can see so much power there. Why? Because it might have been the last, or some of the last things that he would say. Before he came, in the year 1962, he started writing the commentary to the first canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. And the first canto has 19 chapters. And he produced, because he didn't have much money, so he couldn't afford to do the whole thing at once. So he produced the first volume, and then he printed 1962. And then in 1963, he did the second volume. In 1964, he did the third volume. And in 1965, he traveled to America on the ship, Jaladuta. And he said that in that book, the first canto, the Srimad Bhagavatam has 12 cantos, he put everything, the same point, because he didn't know if he will survive. Prabhupada translated up to the 10th canto, and then his disciples completed the next 2 chapters, 1.5 cantos were left. So Prabhupada was in a marathon because time was running. So we can see in his life that he did things almost on an emergency mode. Some of the young boys and girls that came to help him didn't know anything. Some of them came to learn painting. He said, I will teach you Indian painting. And then he started preaching to them. I'll teach you Sanskrit. He will write on a blackboard the Om. And then he'll start preaching to them. I'll teach you cooking. So then some people came to learn how to cook, help him. And then he started preaching to them. I'll teach you Indian music. I'll teach you stories and things like that. And everyone who came to him ended up being preached by Srila Prabhupada. So he was very intent on presenting Krishna consciousness as it is. So before the introduction and before the preface and the dedication, first of all the title, Bhagavad-gita As It Is. And he explains why as it is, because the Bhagavad-gita is just Bhagavad-gita. But then he wrote as it is. And he wrote as it is because Bhagavad-gita means the song of Krishna, the song of God. Bhagavad means belonging to Bhagavan. And Bhagavan is the definition in Sanskrit of God, the one who has all the opulences, fully, complete. So Bhagavad-gita means the song of the Supreme. So the song of the Supreme, or the doctrine of the Supreme, the presentation of Bhagavan, it's the Bhagavad-gita. And in this book, Krishna wants to present himself as he is. He wants to explain Arjuna who really Arjuna is. It is explained also that Arjuna is representing everyone. So when he's talking to Arjuna, he's talking to humanity. And we can see in the purports how Prabhupada talks, not in the context of only Krishna to Arjuna, but Krishna to the whole entire human race. So this is Bhagavad-gita. Prabhupada wrote the Bhagavad-gita when he was in India. And then mysteriously, the Bhagavad-gita was lost. He had a manuscript, whether it was stolen or misplaced, but it was lost. So then what happened? He had to write it again. So imagine, you finish the whole thing, right? We're writing your essays, and then imagine your essays get lost, and you have to start again. But he did it. He wrote the Bhagavad-gita, he commented the Bhagavad-gita all over again. So the book in itself has its own history in terms of how Prabhupada produced it. And interestingly for us to know that the preface of the book, the very beginning, even before the introduction, guess where it was completed? Just a few kilometers from here. 12th of May, 1971, Sydney, Australia. Okay, so us who happen to be in Australia, just somewhere, few, 100,000 kilometers, or I don't know exactly, I'm terrible at geography. But the preface of the Bhagavad-gita, Srila Prabhupada wrote it in Sydney, Australia, 1971. So how many years is that? 53 years ago, half a century. Okay, so Prabhupada was somewhere in Sydney, and he wrote a preface. So in the preface, sometimes when we read books, nowadays there are these people that say they read one book per day. Have you seen those on YouTube and right? Oh, how to read one book per day. How do they do it? They say that they read a book per day or so, or a book per week or something. I mean, I guess it just skip reading and things like that. But generally when we read a book, depends on our time, depends on our capacity, depends on our circumstances. Sometimes we have time, and then we can read. And sometimes we don't have time. So when we don't have time, then we read just the summary, right? So if anything, of every Prabhupada's book, and I have heard this from senior disciples of Srila Prabhupada, because we may say, okay, I don't have time to read the whole thing. Read the prefaces. Very interesting. Sometimes the concluding words also, quite interesting. Just takes you a few minutes. But in those prefaces, which is just 1 or 2 pages, you can find something really impactful that Srila Prabhupada says. And since we are meant to start reading the Gita and discussing some of the things that Srila Prabhupada presents here, I just wanted to mention or to read something that Srila Prabhupada says is the purpose of the Bhagavad-gita. And the purpose of Bhagavad-gita is to become a pure devotee. Right? Should we read that? It says, "We hope, therefore, that people will derive the greatest benefit by studying Bhagavad-gita as it is, as we have presented it here. And if even one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider our attempt a success." Okay, so that was Srila Prabhupada's intention. He was a pure devotee of the Lord, and he wanted others to become pure devotees. So why is that? If you're healthy and you see people that are unhealthy, right? Out of compassion, out of, magnanimity, it's called. Your heart, it's big, so you want to help. Then you just want to share. Oh, I took this, I avoided that, I did this, I went here, I spoke to this person, took this treatment. So this is what Prabhupada wanted. According to the Shastras, according to the scriptures, when one becomes a pure devotee, then you don't want anything. Even if you go through the greatest calamities, you are in ecstasy. Can you even conceive that? I just went to the dentist today. And had they put injections and things, so I don't feel much, but it's uncomfortable. Just a tiny thing. So the scriptures and the example of the great masters, they show that despite all the discomfort they went, they still express their ecstasy in their writings, in their songs, in their behavior, in their services. So we have the preface, but before the preface, we have the dedication. Every book that Srila Prabhupada wrote, practically, he dedicated this book to someone. And I always say this, that you see, sometimes there are these boxes of sweets. Yeah? You buy a box of sweets. And then in the box, you open it, and there's many sweets there. Then you choose, sometimes they have varieties and, all that, and you have to read carefully the ingredients. And they have different shapes, I have seen, right? I don't like chocolate, not because I'm advanced, but because that's something my liver just doesn't like it, So, but sometimes you have this box of chocolates, and when Christmas comes, or what's the other one? Easter comes, chocolates everywhere, and Saint Valentine is there, and things like that. And there's boxes of sweets and chocolates and things. So, one way that we can see, because in fact, the scriptures explain that these descriptions are very sweet, like a box of sweets, chocolates. And they have a name like that, and then you have your preferred ones, and then you go and buy them, and your mouth, it's melting even before you, just the thought of it. So Srila Prabhupada writes these books, and he dedicates this book to those who he loved, he appreciated and admired. So we have this Bhagavad-gita, for example, and he dedicated this book to Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan. Baladev Vidyabhushan was a disciple of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And he established why he dedicated this book. Sometimes we don't talk much about the story of, or the history of Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, but in summary, Baladev Vidyabhushan, in his time, the Vaishnava line wasn't respected because, particularly in the Vedic context, in India, the main authority, the main scriptural authority comes from the Vedas. So if you're a Vedantist, so you know the Vedas, then you're respected. If you don't know the Vedas, you don't quote the Vedas, then no one respects you. You're just a speculator. So the Vaishnava line didn't have, at that time, a commentary on Vedanta philosophy. And therefore, all the commentaries, or the Vasyas, it's called, Vasya, were done by Mayavadis. Mayavadis means those who believe that the Supreme has no form, the Supreme has no real defined name, it's just something that we feel and, amorphous, etc. So Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan took on that responsibility, and then he wrote what's called Govinda Vasya. And in the Govinda Vasya, he established Vaishnava Siddhanta. What's called Siddhanta means conclusion. Vaishnava Siddhanta means those who are worshippers, lovers of Vishnu, Krishna. And then he established that. And by establishing that, then the Vaishnavas got recognition, not for the sake of name or anything like that. That's exactly the reason why there wasn't a Vasya, there wasn't a commentary, because the devotees were like, we don't care about this. But for the sake of preaching and establishing the principles of devotional service, we needed to be recognized. It's like, that's why ISKCON was registered, etc. Because otherwise, we can be deemed as being illegal or something like that, So for that reason, Srila Prabhupada dedicates this book to Baladev Vidyabhushan, right? And there are other books, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, he dedicates to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Chaitanya Charitamrita, he dedicates to the devotees and friends. The Srimad Bhagavatam, he dedicates to whom? Who remembers? Srimad Bhagavatam, he dedicates to his Guru Maharaj. He lives forever, he wrote in the dedication. And the follower, he lives forever in his divine instructions. And his follower lives with him. Okay? That just how Prabhupada was called Kavi sometimes. Kavi means poet. Very poetic. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to like the way that Prabhupada wrote. So he wrote that introduction. When he dedicated the Bhagavatam to him. And one particular dedication that I like is the essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the 10th canto, right? That's the topmost, that's the peak. Like the Bhagavad-gita, the 9th chapter is the peak. But in the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto is the peak, where the gopis are described. and that's also another interesting story, because you see, Prabhupada was preaching, was establishing ISKCON, was going to so many countries and continents, Africa, South America, etc. Building temples in India, purchasing properties in the West. So he was very busy. But every day he will wake up around 2 in the morning. He will go to bed, depends, 9, 10. 2 in the morning he will wake up, and then he will start writing, dictating, translating. So he was running, and the movement was expanding, and he had to manage. Sometimes he had to fly to the other side of the planet because there was some issue, because there was some matter that he had to personally deal. So what was happening is that just as time was running, then his intensity in terms of he wanted all the books out. And sometimes his health wasn't as good as he wanted. So in one of those moments of concern, he decided to, because he was, I think, at that time, I don't know exactly, but I think it was in the 5th or 6th canto of Bhagavatam. 5th or 7th canto, I don't know, somewhere there. And then he decided to write the Krishna book. But the Krishna book is 10th canto. So he summarized the 10th canto, and he produced the Krishna book. So before, you see the sequence, right? So he didn't reach 10th canto just yet, but he wrote. So he said, Prabhupada, what? I mean, his assistants. And he said, why did you do that? He said, because I'm concerned that I go and I leave you without the 10th canto, which is the topmost fruit, nectar. So he wrote the Krishna book. It's quite interesting because he was pushing for the book to be produced. He wanted the book very big. Maybe you have seen some of that version, gray and beautiful photo of Krishna in 3 volumes. And he wanted it big. He chose everything. So Prabhupada was about to start a Ratha Yatra. I forgot exactly where. I think somewhere in America. And the printers, sometimes they do this advanced printing, and they give you a box or 10 books, just like a special printing run, and then they send it to the author or to the people who have commissioned the work. And Prabhupada was about to start the Ratha Yatra or the procession somewhere, and the book arrived, the box arrived. So one of the devotees, Brahmananda Prabhu, he came with the box, and while Prabhupada was walking, they told him, Prabhupada, the Krishna book has arrived. Prabhupada was so happy, so happy. No one advertised anything, no one said anything, but Prabhupada was so blissful that automatically, the description says, people start coming, surrounding Prabhupada, and extending their hands. And then the devotees start selling the book. I forgot how much was it, $10, $20 or something like that. So the books were just flying. And Prabhupada was looking at the pictures and checking if it was done. And then at some point, all these hands and people like desperate to have the Krishna book. Prabhupada was so blissful. He just gave his own copy. It wasn't his copy, he just had it in his hand and he just gave. And then they realized they sold everything. But he was so happy. So that was Prabhupada's mood, that he wanted to give and give, So that book he dedicated to someone very, very special. It's very moving to see that Prabhupada was a yogi of topmost quality, but he was very soft-hearted. And he was, shall we say, almost normal, right? And as a normal person, he had a lot of love for his father. And the Krishna book he dedicates to his father. To my father, Gaur Mohan De, a pure devotee of the Lord. Beautiful. So, I wanted to mention this because when we open these books, it's not like, okay, 700 verses, 18 chapters, okay, here we go. Let's read it, let's get things clear, organized, understood, okay, that's it. No, these books are not different than windows to the spiritual world. That's what Prabhupada explained, right? And all these pictures that you see, our Ram Prasad Prabhu, he produced some of these pictures that we find here. Prabhupada would sometimes look and just get immersed in looking at the pictures. Another time, another occasion, I think it was in New York, in some big festival, they were doing some drama about Hiranyakashipu and Nrsimhadev appearance, yeah? the killing of Hiranyakashipu. And Prabhupada said, this is the only thing better than my books. He enjoyed it so much, especially Mr. Hiranyakashipu. Like that, very jolly. So when we open these books, we have to understand that there was a lot of work, a lot of endeavor that Prabhupada put in producing these books, mass productions, and in every word he says. One time he told the devotees, he was reading, and the devotees came in, surely you have heard this, and then he said, I didn't write this book. No? So the devotees were like, obviously, but they didn't say anything. I didn't write this book. And then he said, Krishna came and told me each word of this book. That's what he said. He didn't say it once, he said it a few times. So, the intention of saying all this is that these books are very, very powerful, and just one of them can change our lives. So today we wanted to mention something about preface and also the introduction. The introduction in the first verse that he refers to, I think is from the Gautamiya Tantra, this Omagyana Timirandasya. And this morning we were discussing in Bhagavad-gita class that agyana means, it's the opposite of jnana. Jnana means knowledge, agyana means ignorance. So in spiritual terms, agyana or ignorance also is compared to darkness or blindness. Just like now, if we don't turn on the lights, you cannot see. I don't know how bright the moon is, but if there's no light, you cannot see. This is the nature of this material world. So, in spiritual terms, if there's no knowledge, you cannot see, you cannot know, we cannot know where to go, how to go there, where we are. We can. Right? So that's the meaning of this verse. Oma jnana timirandasya jnananjana salakaya. So Vedic wisdom uses analogies. And the analogy here is light and darkness. And another analogy is that knowledge, it's like having a cataract removed from our eyes, and then we can see. Cataracts are something that it's like a, what do you call that? Like a thin layer, right? And then it covers the eyes, so you cannot see. So jnananjana salakaya chakshur means eyes. Unmilitam, they are open. Jena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Therefore, the disciple, the devotee, offer obeisance to the spiritual master. Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. And then he goes on, including what's called, in Vedic terms, the Mangala Charana. The Mangala Charana refers to, that's a standard practice for Vedic writings. In the beginning, there should be Mangala Charana, which means all auspiciousness. And it's quite interesting because in other books also that Srila Prabhupada wrote, particularly in the Nectar of Devotion, which is a summary of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami, there is a nice prayer, and Prabhupada refers to that prayer. He says that Rupa Goswami here offers the Mangala Charana, which is generally respects, glorification to your superiors, to your predecessors. And you acknowledge that what you have been given. You know, they have opened my eyes, they have engaged me in this service, etc. So you are glorifying them. And then you glorify the Supreme Lord, which is the source of all the mercy. It's quite interesting how Prabhupada says that Rupa Goswami brings the Mangala Charana. So the nectar of devotion, right? The nectar of devotion can be safe. Can be. It's like sometimes you see these people in hospitals. They transport some important medicine. I remember from my Guru Maharaj, There was some important medicine they were sending from America in 2015. Something, he had a medical emergency. And we all waiting, right? And the box or the package was insured because it was a new medicine for his liver. So Rupa Goswami, it's describing the book that he wrote, Nectar of Devotion, as a very valuable medicine. And in fact, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also, in some of his songs, he calls this process Aushadhi Maya. Aushadhi means medicine. That's what it means. Aushadhi Maya. So it's a medicine for illusion. Like sometimes you may have a fever, you may have a stomach ache or headache, and then you go and take a Panadol or this, that, the other. So in the same way, these books, on one hand, can be compared to a box of sweets, which are dedicated to your loved ones, yeah? From, to, yeah? And also can be compared to medicine, because they cure us from the ignorance or disease of ignorance, yeah. So, the introduction starts with the Mangalacharana, and Srila Prabhupada then goes on to starts describing what's going to be the content of the whole Gita. And then he mentions the 5 subjects. We know those 5 subjects, right? Ishvara, Jiva. Ishvara means the Supreme Lord, the controller. Jiva, the living entity. What else? Kala means time. Right, we have become, this is like a town Sanskrit. Everyone talks in Sanskrit now here in the new government. Very nice, very auspicious. So we have Ishvara, Jiva, said Kala, time. Then we have, what else? Karma, action. And then we have Prakriti. Prakriti means nature. So these are the 5 topics. So I will come back and I'll start to read some of the things that Prabhupada says. But a trick for learning things is sometimes, I often use this trick, is sometimes go to the end of it, you know, how the book begins, and then you go to the end and see how the book ends. You know, it's like a movie. Oh, how it ends. I can't wait. I just want to spoil the thing. Right? And the ending of this introduction is very, very, very interesting, to say the least, and very powerful, also very deep. Srila Prabhupada, at the end of the introduction, 30 pages, that's a lot of information there. What he does at the end of it is that he includes what's called the Gita Mahatmya. And the Gita Mahatmya is expressed by one of the great acharyas of the Vedic world, Vedic knowledge, Sankaracharya. And he includes the different verses from this Gita Mahatmya, glorifying the Bhagavad-gita. And particularly there's one, I just don't want to read all of them, but there's one, the last one, that is very beautiful, very poetic. And it says like this: Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam. Ekam Shastra means let there be one Shastra. Eka means one, and Shastra means scripture. Ekam Shastra Devaki Putra. Putra means son, and Devaki is the mother of Krishna. Gitam. Let this song be the one Shastra. Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva. Again, we have that. Devaki Putra Eva. Let there be one divinity, one supreme, that same son of Devaki. Eko mantra, let there be one prayer. Eko mantrastasya namami jani. Let that mantra, that hymn, that prayer be the one that glorifies you, your name. Karmapi ekam. Let there be one action. Karma is action. Tasya devasya seva. Service to the divine. Let there be that one. And this is how Prabhupada translates that. In this present day, this is commenting, but then the translation comes. In this present day, people are very much eager to have one scripture, one God, one religion, and one occupation. Therefore, Eko Shastram Devakiputra Gitam. Let there be one common scripture for the whole world, Bhagavad-gita. Eko Devo Devakiputra Eva. Let there be one God for the whole world, Sri Krishna. Eko Mantrastasya Namani Jani. And one mantra or hymn, one prayer, the chanting of his name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Karmapyakam tasya devasya seva. And let there be one work only, the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And after that, he includes the parampara. The parampara means the chain of disciplic succession that goes from master to disciple. This must be a previous student of the Gita who didn't complete his or her Bhakti Shastri, and it's eagerly wanting to catch up. Anyway, took shelter in the harmonium. So this is how Prabhupada structures the introduction of the Gita, and we will read a little bit of what he says. After the Mangala Charana, Prabhupada says, Bhagavad-gita is also known as Gita Upanishad. And there is a reason why that name is given to the Gita. It is the essence of Vedic knowledge and one of the most important Upanishads in Vedic literature. Of course, there are many commentaries in English of the Bhagavad-gita, and one may question the necessity for another one. How many translations of the Bhagavad-gita were there, Prabhupada says? In the preface? Who remembers? 600, he says. 600. Huh? How did he know? I don't know. But he says 600. No Google at that time. So, Prabhupada is commenting on this. So one may question, why another one? That's how he starts. He's questioning his own production of this book. This present edition can be explained in the following way. Recently, an American lady asked me to recommend an English translation of Bhagavad-gita. Remember, there was no Bhagavad-gita at that time because his Bhagavad-gita was stolen. So he hadn't produced that. Okay? This is very early days. But as far as I have seen, not only in America, but also in India, none of them, meaning the translations, can be strictly said to be authoritative because in almost every one of them, the commentator has expressed his own opinions without touching the spirit of the Bhagavad-gita as it is. The spirit of Bhagavad-gita is mentioned in Bhagavad-gita itself. It is just like this. If we want to take a particular medicine, then we have to follow the directions written on the label. We cannot take the medicine according to our own whim or the directions of a friend. It must be taken according to the direction on the label or the directions given by a physician. Similarly, Bhagavad-gita should be taken or accepted as it is, directed by the speaker himself. The speaker of Bhagavad-gita is Lord Sri Krishna. He is mentioned on every page of Bhagavad-gita as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Of course, the word Bhagavan sometimes refers to any powerful person or any powerful demigod, and certainly here Bhagavan designates Lord Sri Krishna as a great personality. But at the same time, we should know that Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as is confirmed by all great acharyas, spiritual master. Sankaracharya, he writes first. Sankaracharya is the head of the Mayavadis. In fact, Sankaracharya for us, so we know, is who? You should know. Yeah. It's Lord Shiva himself that came, right, to confuse people, right, with Vedanta. And you know why he came? People may say, why did he come? Why when Lord Shiva is, topmost devotee, why did he come? Yeah? Have you heard? Please share. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. 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 Brought them to the Vedas. Yeah, like that. But there's one interesting thing. You see, like, I'm amazed in this temple. Is perhaps the temple that reminds me most Mayapur. To be quite frank, I have to be honest. Sometimes I'm here and I'm thinking, gee, I'm in Mayapur. This is like a mini Mayapur. The floor is identical. And I'm amazed how the pujaris, you all dress the deities so beautifully. And how you contrast the colors. And it's impossible for me even to conceive how you can do it so quickly every single day. So one of the explanations that is given in regards of Sankaracharya's commentary, impersonal commentaries on the Vedanta philosophy, is that it's like when you put, sometimes here they put black backdrops, right? And then they put silver or gold, and then it enhances the beauty of silver or gold dresses and ornaments. So in the same way, Lord Shiva appears in the form of Sankaracharya to give this opaque understanding of the Vedas. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and presents the pure instructions of bhakti, of love, it shines. And the contrasting, it's so evident that, personally, I had a little attraction to what I thought was Mayavada. I didn't really know, but the energy and, But now, after a few years, it's just like, there's nothing compares to be with devotees, to chant the holy names, to read the Shastra. Nothing compares. It's not fanatism, it's just my little realization. So Prabhupada is mentioning these great acharyas: Sankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka Swami, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and many other authorities of Vedic knowledge in India. The Lord himself also establishes himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad-gita. And he is accepted as such in the Brahma Samhita. Brahma Samhita is the explanation or the revelation that Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, shared after Krishna empowered him with that vision that he is the Supreme, a little boy, blue color, playing the flute. I remember when the devotees told me this the first time, I thought, you gotta be kidding. You gotta be insane. My best friend was like, I was like, what are you on? What did you take? Please, let go of that. Yes, far out. God is a little boy, he plays eternally in the forest. And I was just, okay, all right, what else? Here I am. So, Brahma Samhita and all the Puranas. Puranas means ancient Vedic scriptures, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Bhagavad Purana. And then he includes, out of 18,000 verses in the Bhagavatam, there's one line. Yeah? As I said, like this harmonium can expand and then we can contract the whole thing, or like an accordion. So 18,000 verses can be summarized in one line. And what is that line? Prabhupada, very cleverly, very expertly, has included this line here in the introduction. Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam, which means Krishna is the supreme, the authentic, the primordial Swayam Bhagavan. He is the Supreme Personality of God. He's not an expansion, he's not a... No, he is the Supreme Person. Krishna is tu Bhagavan Swayam. And now I forgot exactly where is it. It's in the first canto, 3rd chapter. I think it's in text number 40, but, don't with me if I'm wrong. Krishna is tu Bhagavan Swayam. Therefore, we should take Bhagavad-gita as it is, directed by the personality of God Himself. Okay, so that's the intro of Srila Prabhupada to the introduction of the Bhagavad-gita. And then something interesting that Prabhupada does. As you can see, Krishna is also described as a great actor, right? And great actors know when to do an entrance, right? They know how to do it. Yeah, that's their skill. So in the Bhagavad-gita, apart from so many wonderful things, Krishna doesn't really come onto the scene straight away, correct? He just comes out a little bit. He gives us a big view of Himself. In which chapter? First. Because it's all about Arjuna. You're not the body, you're not the mind, don't lament, you have to work, do your duty, fight for me, learn from a spiritual master, it's become peaceful. So when does He appear? Chapter? Before. 4. When He says, I have taught this to the Son God, to His, and then the knowledge was passed. He just came out a little bit, and then He shows in a few verses that He's actually supreme. We're not equal. We may be sitting here in the same chariot, but we're not equal. You forgot everything in previous life, but I didn't. And then He declares, by my own energy, I appear. Millennium after millennium, He gives those appearance verses. But then He shies away, let's say, and then keeps giving the lessons to Arjuna. Control your mind, become peaceful, and all that. And then in chapter 7, then He comes. Then He does the entrance. Then the trumpets are blown, and then the curtains are open, and then Krishna appears and says, be quiet, now listen, I will teach you who really am I. And that's knowledge of the Absolute. So, Srila Prabhupada is doing pretty much the same. He's mentioning briefly who Krishna is. And then he quotes those verses in chapter 4. Imam Vivasote Yogam, etc. And then Prabhupada continues commenting. Here the Lord informs Arjuna that this system of yoga, the Bhagavad-gita, was first spoken to the Sun God. And the Sun God explained it to Manu. And Manu explained it to Iksvaku. And in that way, by disciplic succession, one speaker after another, this yoga system has been coming down. But in the course of time, it has become lost. Consequently, the Lord has to speak it again, this time to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So the Bhagavad-gita is eternal. The Bhagavad-gita is presented to the great Sun, God, and the father of mankind, Manu, and the great kings of the past. But in time, like everything, things get lost. And then Krishna has to establish it again. So, Srila Prabhupada, as you can see in the introduction itself, it's following the same sequence that Krishna is doing. These things are very subtle. And unless we read and analyze and think, we're not going to just read, okay, just pass the pages. It's 30 pages. A long introduction, right? An introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam, same. It's just like 40 pages, I think, But if we read carefully, page by page, in the association of devotees, by the mercy of the gurus, etc., Krishna, then we can get these things. So, Prabhupada is showing us in his writing that he is understanding what Krishna is doing. He's understanding. He's just showing it, respecting the way that Krishna chooses to present himself. In the beginning, just slightly, I am the big lecturer, professor, who taught yoga to these great personalities. Huh? But then later he comes full on in the middle sections of the Bhagavad-gita. Okay, so we stop here. Srila Prabhupada started presenting Bhagavad-gita in 1966, 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So when there was some discussion about starting doing Gita, I suggested, somebody said, let's do it every day. And I said, no, hold on. Okay, let's do it one day. I said, no, why don't we aim at 3 days? Because that's how Prabhupada used to do it. So we're trying to reestablish Bhagavad-gita discussions, presentations. So Monday, I think it's Monday, Thursday, and maybe Saturday. So we have to work out a roster. So in this way, this is something that pleases Prabhupada. And yes, in the beginning, not many people, but the vision is that at some point there won't be enough room and we have to expand, like that. Prabhupada said, he was sitting, you may have heard this past them. He was sitting somewhere in some park on his own, just before things have really started. And then, I think it was a bus driver, happened to sit next to him and ask him, sir, so where are you from? And all that, And then he said, I'm coming from India. I'm a monk, saint from India. And what is your mission here? I came because I have many temples and many devotees and many books. Oh, really? And where are they? And then he said, time is just a matter of time. He said, right? So Prabhupada was envisioning big things. Think big, he used to say, think big. And whenever devotees came and said, we did this, or we achieved that, he says, double it. Huh? So I know that this project is very, very successful, but if we can increase it, improve it, double it, as Prabhupada said, that would be good. So starting reading Bhagavad-gita, and someone told me, don't get discouraged when not many people come, because the Goswamis used to be 2 or 3 of them, there are 6, but not all of them were together all the time. So just a few will come, and then slowly Krishna will start attracting others, and then, at some point there's no room. Like in Mayapur, there's no room. Every year, I remember in 2015 or 16, 12,000 people came for the Navadvip Parikrama. 12,000 was a record at that time. And the TOVP temple that is being built is for 10,000. So it's already too small. It's already small. It hasn't been even inaugurated, not even open. It's already too small. So all the Swamis were up there on the stage, Radhan Maharaj and others. And they say, that is the problem when you're dealing with the mercy of Krishna. It's so big that you cannot even calculate. You think, okay, let's do this big temple, and it's already too small because the mercy is flowing and flowing and flowing. But that is the power of this book and the other books that Srila Prabhupada produced that attracts everyone. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad-gita ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. Om Tat Sat.